You're watching Fugitive Redeye, and welcome to another compilation slash supercut of some of my old content. Got kind of a variety pack here of some of my horror content. Since it's October, I felt like it's been a while since I've done one of these horror-themed compilations. The last one I did was several years ago with my Halloween marathon. So I thought, it'd be a fun one to just kind of have this compilation put together. And I am also in the process of planning out some more Halloween-themed videos for this month. And obviously the live stream will be happening this year, as per usual. Welcome to another DVD collection video. Today I will be talking about my slasher film collection as well as my splatter film collection. I'm lumping the two in together because they're somewhat similar genres in some respects. This is Peeping Tom, which according to Scream 4, is the first slasher film. It was made a few months before Psycho, so it does predate it, so I wouldn't doubt it being the first actual slasher film. I guess it depends on how you define it. It's a pretty interesting movie. It's about this guy who goes around and he kills people while he films it, and you see everything from his perspective when he has the camera. And here we have the original novel of Psycho. The novel actually came out a year before Psycho, so it predates Peeping Tom in that, but obviously the film came later. There's actually quite a few differences between the novel and the film of Psycho, in that Norman is a fat guy in his 40s in the novel. And personally, I prefer the movie version, but there's a lot more from Norman's point of view in the novel as well. Here we have the first movie, Psycho Special Edition. This is an all-time classic. It popularized Alfred Hitchcock and sort of made his career, I think. There's both the discs. I absolutely love this film. It's one of my all-time favorites. Here's Psycho 2. One of the better of the sequels. There's a total of 4 Psycho movies of the old ones, at least actual movies. Unless you count the Bates Motel movie, which was absolutely awful, from 1987. I wouldn't recommend it, but this is actually really good. Psycho 2 takes place 22 years after the first film. Norman returns home, and the killings start up again. This film, unlike the first, actually paints Norman in a sympathetic light, and makes you want him to succeed. I won't give away the ending or several other parts about the film, but it is a very good movie if you've seen the first Psycho and want more of it. Here we have Psycho 3, which I consider to be the low point of the movie series, but still decent. It was the directorial debut of Anthony Perkins. He's the man who portrayed Norman Bates in all 4 films. There's the back of the case, and the disc itself. Here we have Season 1 of Bates Motel. It's the only season I currently own. I think that this show was really, really good so far. At least Seasons 1 through 3 were all really good. Season 4 I felt was a little bit lacking in what Seasons 1 through 3 had. I don't know, to me it just felt like some of the charm was gone. I mean, it was still good, but not as good. If you're unfamiliar with what Bates Motel is, then it's a contemporary prequel Series 2 Psycho. And that's the thing, is I really liked it when it was just a contemporary prequel, but they changed some key elements to the Psycho plotline, which, they had already changed several elements in Season 1, but Season 4 really changed a lot of shit. And then Season 4, they're going to be recapping the first Psycho movie, basically. And they cast Rihanna as Marion Crane, which I just think is poor casting. She is not a very good actress, in my opinion. I mean, have you ever seen that movie Battleship? She was fucking awful in that. But regardless, I'll still give Season 5 a chance, even though that is the case. Here we have Psycho 4 The Beginning. I have it on VHS because that's the only way to get it on its own. It has been released onto DVD in a 4-pack set with Psychos 2 and 3, as well as that shitty Bates Motel movie from 1987 that I mentioned earlier. And they're all on the one disc, so since I already had Psychos 2 and 3, I bought just the VHS of Psycho 4. In my opinion, this is the best of the Psycho sequels because it's a prequel and a sequel at the same time. And I felt that the ending was a very satisfying conclusion to the Psycho series. It's sad that not long after Anthony Perkins did pass away, but I think this movie was a good note to go out on. I'm not sure if it was his last film, but it was one of the last ones he did. Here we have Friday the 13th, the Ultimate Edition DVD collection. This set contains the first 8 Friday the 13th films, so it's got a lot of them. There's the back of the case, and these are the inner cases. Here we have Jason X, which is the 10th Friday the 13th film. I don't actually own the 9th, Jason Goes to Hell, simply because it is absolutely awful. I mean, Jason X is cheesy as hell, and it's got a lot of really bad and fucking horrible moments, but it's still enjoyable. And it's funny. Not to mention you get Cyber Jason, which is pretty fucking cool. Here we have the Nightmare on Elm Street collection. This set contains the first original 7 Nightmare on Elm Street films. There's the first movie. There's the second movie, which is actually my least favorite of the original films, not including that horrible remake, obviously. There's the third movie, the fourth movie, the fifth, the sixth, which is chronologically the end of the original series anyway, and the seventh, which is a very meta movie, and it's actually really good, but it's very weird compared to the others. And there's the bonus disc. Here's Freddy's Nightmares, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the series. This contains the first 3 episodes and was only released in Region 2. There's the back of the case, and the disc itself. And here we have that awful Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I actually originally liked this when I first saw it, but it's fucking awful. I do not recommend this one at all. None of the characters are any good, and the guy who plays Freddy just does not fit him well. I used to have Freddy vs. Jason as well, but I let my uncle borrow it and he lost it, so I might have to re-get that. And here we have Child's Play, which is the first Chucky movie. There's the back of the case, and the disc. Here we have Chucky, the Killer DVD collection. It contained Child's Play 2, Child's Play 3, Bride of Chucky, and Seed of Chucky. There's the back of the case. There we go. And these just come on 2 double-sided discs. Here we have Curse of Chucky, which is the 6th Child's Play film. There's the back of the case. There's the inner case, the back of the inner case, and the disc. Here we have the first Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween. This is a cheap DVD that I got at a gas station. Part of the Treasure Hunt collection from Movies You Buy. Here we have Halloween 2 and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Now, Halloween 2 is a pretty good slasher movie. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is a completely different movie than any of the rest of the Halloween films. Halloween 2 picks up right where Halloween 1 leaves off, and Halloween 3 has nothing to do with the universe and is actually about these robots doing witchcraft to make these masks kill little kids. So yeah, that has nothing to do with the rest of the franchise. Here we have Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, and I think probably my favorite of the original Halloween series. See, originally they were going to do it as an anthology series with a different kind of movie each time. In fact, the 4th Halloween was originally going to be a ghost story. But after the colossal failure that was Halloween 3, they decided to scrap the whole ghost story idea and bring Michael Myers back. And here we have Halloween H2O, which is either the 7th or 8th Halloween film. I can't remember. I think it's the 7th. It's included in this Masters of Terror set, because when I bought it, they had this, and I thought, why not have 4 movies for the price of 1? There's the back of the case, and the disc. Yeah, that's the next Halloween I have. I don't have 5 or 6. I think this one is the 7th. I don't have the 8th either. Since then, I actually have got 6 and 8. I still don't have 5, though. Now here we have the Rob Zombie remake of Halloween, which I know I'm going to get a lot of controversy for this, but this is actually my favorite of the Halloween films. I loved the backstory scenes. I loved pretty much everything about this movie. It's darker, it's grittier, and it's more messed up. I think it's probably my favorite of the Halloween series just because I really liked the way it was paced and the way everything was portrayed. I also liked all the bits with Michael Myers as a kid. But yeah, there's a lot of people that I'm sure will disagree with that, but that's just how I feel. I have the second Rob Zombie Halloween as well, but I'm not sure where it's located, plus it's terrible. But I did just get a replacement copy for Freddy vs. Jason. Now on to the Hannibal Lecter franchise. Here we have the first Hannibal movie, Manhunter, which personally I'm not the biggest fan of. Some people say it's better than Red Dragon, and others say it's the best Hannibal movie. Personally, I don't believe either of those statements to be true. I think Silence of the Lambs is the best Hannibal movie, and I think Red Dragon is a better adaptation. Here we have Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal, as well as another copy of Manhunter. They're in a weird order on the case, as well as the discs. I've never actually tried any of these discs, because I have Silence of the Lambs on VHS. Plus, I watched them on Netflix, but I did buy these discs used, and whoever owned it previously put them in a weird order in the case as well, so whatever. Here we have Red Dragon, and this is a screening copy of it, and the back is just filled with promotional stuff. And there's the disc itself. Here we have Terror Firmer, which is a slasher film by Troma. There's the back of the case. There's disc 1. And there's disc 2. I've covered part of it because it shows this guy's bare ass, so yeah. Here we have Jack Frost 2, Revenge of the Killer Mutant Snowman. There's the back of the case. And there's the disc. Unfortunately, I don't have the first Jack Frost movie. They're both pretty funny, though. Here we have Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which I don't know if you'd consider a slasher movie or a monster movie, but I'm including it anyway, because it's kind of both. There's the back of the case. And there's the disc. Here we have Scream, the director's cut, which was only ever released on Laserdisc. From what I've heard, the changes are only marginal, and it's only like 8 seconds worth of difference between the director's cut and the theatrical. So I really don't know if it's really worth owning it if you don't have a Laserdisc player, which I don't, but I bought it because I like to collect stuff, so I do plan on getting a player eventually, but yeah, here it is. Here we have Scream 4, which is the only other Scream film I own currently. I plan on getting 2 and 3 eventually, though. I also have Scream 1 on VHS somewhere, but I don't know where it is. And there's the disc itself. And here we have Vacancy, a film about this couple that goes to a hotel and discovers a bunch of snuff tapes there, and then the people there try to kill them and make another snuff tape. There's the back of the case. And the disc itself. Here's Vacancy 2, the first cut, which is a prequel to Vacancy. And frankly, I think this one is superior, just because it's sort of an origin story, and it's much more entertaining, in my opinion. There's the back of the case, and the disc. Here we have Silent Night, Deadly Night, Parts 1 and 2, which I already did a review on last year. And by last year, I mean 2015. We did it in December, so it was the Christmas special for cult films we did back then. We didn't manage to get around to doing one this year, but that's regardless. And yes, I'm aware it's 2017 now, but as I mentioned, when I say last year, I refer to December 2015. Anyway, as you see, it's on a double-sided disc. Here we have Wishmaster 1 and 2, which are the only good Wishmasters. Again, I don't know whether to consider these slashers or monster movies, because they're technically both. But as you can see once more, it's a double-sided disc. Here's Wishmaster 4. This is absolute crap. I don't recommend it. I actually did a video bitching about it a while back, but it's really not worth watching. It is probably the worst of the Wishmaster films. Which is saying a lot, considering how bad the third movie was. Moving on to splatter films, here we have the first 5 Saw films. There's the back of the case. There's disc 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Here's Saw 6. There's the back and the disc. Here we have the 7th Saw film, also known as Saw 3D or Saw the Final Chapter. This entire franchise is something I absolutely loved. Unfortunately, this particular one is the only Saw film that I don't have the director's cut of, simply because the unrated cut was only available on Blu-ray at the time I purchased it, and at the time I did not have a Blu-ray player. I do have a Blu-ray player now, plus it is available on DVD with the complete collection set, so I might re-get it later. I'm really happy they're bringing the franchise back to some extent, but to another extent I'm not. I really do feel like this film was the perfect ending to the series, even though it was 2 films kind of smushed together and kind of felt rushed, but otherwise it was still really good. I mean, I love all the Saw films, but yeah, I'm glad they're bringing the franchise back, but I hope they don't fuck it up. I really do feel like this was a good ending to the series, but, you know, I was always willing to see more if they make it, so as long as it's good, I will watch it. Here we have Club Dread, which is a comedy slasher created by the same guys who did Super Troopers. There's the back of the case, and the disc. Moving back to splatter films, here's The Collector. I don't have its sequel, The Collection, but I do have The Collector. This is from some of the crew behind some of the Saw films. It was originally actually planned as a prequel to Saw, but then it became its own thing later on. It's a pretty good movie. It's nowhere near as good as Saw, but it's a pretty decent splatter film if you want to see it. I do recommend it if you like, gory films, but there's not a whole lot of substance to it, whereas Saw, I felt, was somewhat more philosophical and kind of made Jigsaw into an anti-hero rather than a villain, but this guy's just a straight-up villain. Here we have Hostel, which is another good splatter film about these people who go on vacation and end up in this hotel where people pay to murder people. It's an incredibly violent film, but obviously for splatter films, that's to be expected. There's disc 1 and disc 2. There's 2 endings to this movie, and I honestly don't know which one I prefer. I think I do kind of like the director's cut ending better, but canonically it doesn't make sense with the way Hostel 2 goes, rather. Speaking of Hostel 2, here it is in a slipcase here. There's the back. As you can see, the inside case looks identical. There's the disc itself. But I think that about does it for this collection video. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Personally, I love splatter and slasher films. I know a lot of them are really messed up, but that's part of what makes them enjoyable. And, every now and then you want to sit back and relax to a good mindless, gore movie. I think probably Hostel 2 is the goriest out of the ones I've showcased here, especially because of that ending in the fucking unrated version. I remember a while back, Corbin told me I should do, like, one of those, like, childhood fear videos of things that scared you as a child. And I just remember seeing a lot of those and thinking, these people are fucking pussies. Did any of this actually scare anyone? Granted, I had movies and shit that scared me as a kid. Like, I mean, when I was a kid, Halloween 6 scared me, which I don't fully understand, because Halloween 6 is not scary at all. But I thought Michael Myers was going to pop out of the closet and stab me, which I mentioned this in a shit show, actually, if I remember right. Yeah, I did. And then I also mentioned that there was a Saw 6 commercial that's very cleverly done that would have the puppet randomly pop up on your screen during the commercial break and just say, like, hello. And, like, that was the entire trailer. That freaked me out when I was younger, too. But a lot of the things people get scared of, I just don't get. Like, there's this, like, Teletubbies segment that has, like, a lion and a bear made out of wood, just kind of chasing each other around, and the bear's going, blah, 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 and the lion's like, I'm gonna get you, rah. And people found that scary, apparently. Like, I know Teletubbies is for toddlers, so whatever, but I don't get it. There's, like, people got, like, scared of a lot of things on Courage the Cowardly Dog, like they were genuinely terrified of it, but I never got that. I loved Courage growing up. One of my favorite shows as a kid. And it never, like, physically scared me. Like, I thought things were, like, oh, creepy and cool. But I never got scared by it. I know when I was, like, 3, I watched the 90s version of Stephen King's It. Didn't scare me either. But I saw it multiple times after that. But the first time I saw it, I was, like, 3. And I read Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And that was one of my favorite book series as a kid, too. And I remember they changed the artwork, because they're a bunch of fucking pansies. And they're like, oh, this is too scary for kids. Like, you take away the artwork, and it literally defeats the entire purpose of reading the fucking books. Because the stories themselves are not great. The artwork is what makes it. The artwork is what sells it. The stories themselves are mediocre at best. I remember I had a friend, we went and saw Scooby-Doo, the movie, when it came out in movie theaters, right? So that was quite some time ago. And he took off out of the theater. He went to go watch some other movie with his mom, because the ghost, the Luna ghost at the beginning of Scooby-Doo, the movie, scared the shit out of him. I don't get it. And he was only a couple years younger than me, mind you. So, it's like, what does any of this mean? Like, why are people scared so fucking easily? That same friend also got freaked out one time when we went and saw The Marine, starring John Cena. The explosions kind of freaked him out. And, like, all the violence at the beginning of the movie. I mean, this friend was kind of a pussy in general. He also used to, watch a lot of, like, really girly shows on, like, Saturday mornings on cartoons. And it's like, whatever, I don't care, you can watch what you want. But I made fun of him because that's what kids do. And he would make up the excuse that he was just waiting until the Ninja Turtles came on, which, granted, it did come on eventually, so maybe he was telling the truth. And he was watching Winx Club, which, maybe he was checking out the characters, in which case, I was in the wrong to make fun of him. Otherwise, he can go to hell. No, I'm just kidding, he's fine. But, no, that friend was an interesting lad. He used to want to go dig out in my backyard, right? Like, whenever we'd hang out, he's like, let's go dig. Yeah, anyway, and that's a whole other tangent for maybe another day, but, a lot of people get scared by shit that I'm just like, this was supposed to scare someone? Like, I get it when it's, like, genuinely kind of dark. Like Courage, although it never scared me, and I think people who got scared of it are either A, making it up and exaggerating, B, watched it at a very young age and got scared because they were very, very young, or C, are just fucking pussies. Like, again, granted, there was plenty of stuff I saw when I was younger that used to creep me out, but just because something creeped me out or, like, was scary, that didn't, like, take me away from it. If anything, that drew me more towards it. I actually kind of miss the ability to be scared physically by movies. Like, that is something I miss, because I don't feel that anymore. Now when I'm watching a horror movie, I just sit back and have fun, which granted is great too, but I do miss being kept up at night. Like, back when I used to listen to some particularly good creepypastas. Or back when I used to watch, like, ghost videos on YouTube and shit and get scared by those. Nothing like that really creeps me out that much anymore. Every once in a while, I'll find something that I can't explain online that maybe freaks me out, but that is very, very rare of an occurrence now, so it doesn't happen enough to be really worth mentioning. That said, again, I get everyone's scared by different things, and again, there were things that scared me when I was younger that make no sense to me now, like when I originally watched Halloween 6, that scared me somehow. Don't know why. But there's a lot of things that I think that, to an extent, we need to get exposed to horror to an extent at a younger age, because it adds a certain effect that you don't really have as much fun if you're not getting a little scared once in a while. Like I said on the shit show I did with Anthony and Corbin a while back, and by a while back I mean like a month or two ago, maybe 3. We were talking about, how I played Bloody Mary one time and did it wrong, and, we were all terrified. Yeah, I don't typically find, like, uncanny CGI and stuff, like, creepy, like, things that look kind of weird. There's some occasions where I'm like, yeah, I get that. Like, that fucking walrus from Pingu, I'm like, okay, I get why that would scare children. But I grew up with horror as part of my life from a very young age. Like, when I was a kid, my dad used to read Stephen King books to me. He'd censor a lot, mind you. He would leave out a lot, because those books are not child appropriate, but he'd leave out a lot of stuff, and he'd creatively find ways to still tell the story while leaving out certain more explicit details. I remember one time in school, there was actually a copy of Silence of the Lambs in the janitor's closet that a couple of the kids swiped, and we watched it. I didn't watch the whole thing. I saw a couple bits of it. I saw it later on. Love that movie, by the way. My favorite Hannibal movie by far. Of course, every school and neighborhood and stuff that, I've lived in has had their urban legends and their local legends and stuff. Not so much necessarily neighborhoods, although I think there have been, like, houses and stuff growing up that were supposedly haunted. Supposedly the auditorium of my high school was supposed to be haunted. I don't know, I do love that urban legend stuff. That's something that brings up a hell of a lot of nostalgia in me. Because, I've always been fascinated by things like, supposedly paranormal things, cryptozoology, aliens, stuff like that. That kind of stuff has always been an interest of mine. I'll go more in depth on the aliens thing on a Life of Redeye episode at some point, because I used to be real nutty with that when I was a kid, and I think that'd be a fun topic for a video all on its own. I remember one time there was this, like, movie we watched on, I think it was the Sci-Fi Channel. There's this movie called Boo, and it genuinely scared me at the time we saw it. It's a shitty horror movie, by the way. There's also a weird Chupacabra movie they had there that took place on a boat, where, like, this Chupacabra was on, like, a cruise ship or something. I also remember in high school, when I first heard about Slender Man, I didn't know it was a creepypasta, because I didn't know what the fuck a creepypasta was. And I remember it scared me when I first heard about it, or at least I found it interesting. Because I love weird, creepy urban legends and stuff like that. But I do definitely feel like a lot of that stuff is oversaturated online now. I still watch Chills, not because it's creepy, but because, in my opinion, Chills is playing a character, and it's, like, intentionally bad, and I have a good time watching it. Chills is fun. I don't think you can genuinely hate Chills, because he's just kind of a fun, kooky thing to watch. But I've gone off on multiple tangents here. What I'm getting at is, I think horror is kind of something that has been an important part of my life for a long time. And I think that growing up with just a little bit of it, I think is kind of important. That's why I think, like, kids should see movies like Watership Down and stuff like that are kind of freaky and violent, but not to the point where it's, like, gratuitous. But yeah, also, incidentally, my favorite books that my dad used to read to me were the Dark Tower series. I love that book series. I need to reread it. I started rereading it in high school, but I didn't finish it. I own the Drawing of Three now, which is the second book, and then my dad actually found his old copies that he used to read to us of 3 and 4, so I'm gonna reread through those. I gotta get a copy of 1 again, I guess. But yeah, the movie adaptation was lackluster as shit, though, to say the least. I grew up with a lot of Stephen King stuff, though. That was a big part of my childhood, too. And then in high school, I watched a lot of, like, slasher movies and stuff that I hadn't seen. Like, I watched a few slasher movies here and there growing up, but I really started getting into them in high school. Was originally debating doing this topic just as like a random thoughts and, you know, just putting minimum effort into it, but fuck it, let's do it as a flashbacks and keep the series going. Now, I've probably talked about some of this subject, at least a little bit, in other videos, particularly my criticism of a lot of videos like this, because a lot of them will title it childhood trauma and stuff like that, which I've always taken issue with. I've never really cared for that sort of titling scheme. Like, I know it's just, you know, fun titles and whatnot, but at the same time, it makes people come off as fucking pussies, so that's not what I'm gonna call it. And on top of that, there's not a whole lot of media that actually scared me as a kid, and it's predominantly media that these videos are always talking about, right? But nevertheless, there were some that got me, and none of them were really like kid shows or anything like that. Like, you hear a lot of these people say, like, Courage the Cowardly Dog, or stuff like that scared them, which I always am like, what, really? Or, like, God forbid those people who got scared by fucking Teletubbies or fucking Pingu. But when I was a kid, the things that scared me were Jurassic Park, specifically The Lost World, because that's the one I watched the most as a kid, even though out of the first 3 movies, it's actually my least favorite. 1 being the best, and then 3 being, I think, incredibly underrated. But I remember, as a little kid of about maybe 7, the scene where the dinosaur shows up outside the window of the house and, like, eats the dog and is drinking out of the pool and the kid sees it. That part kind of scared me as a kid, to the point where at one point, there was one night that I had watched it and slept in my parents' room. Like I said, I was probably like 6 or 7. And I remember my parents had this big-ass bed with this little thing underneath it, like a little door, like a storage compartment or something, underneath the bed. But there was like a tunnel that you could like crawl through. It was really weird. I'm not sure what exactly you'd call that, but I used to play in that tunnel a lot. Completely unrelated to the video, but I just thought of it because of that time. That was one thing that did scare me as a kid, was that one scene in The Lost World where the T-Rex is outside the kid's house and eats the dog and scares the hell out of the kid. So that was one thing that kind of freaked me out as a little kid. Another thing that scared me a little bit when I was younger was when I first saw Halloween 6, which was the first Halloween movie I've ever seen. And I saw that at a fairly young age, too. I don't remember exactly how old. It was definitely after that scene from The Lost World scared me. And there was only really that one time that it scared me. But one thing that scared me was the first time I watched Halloween 6 when I was a kid. I was scared of that because I kept thinking of things like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees and shit like that. Just popping out of the closet, which, again, completely irrational. Again, I was still a little kid. It was after the Jurassic Park thing, but it still was like something really stupid to be scared of, especially with Halloween 6 being as poorly written as it is. I like Halloween 6. It is a stupid-ass movie, though. But like I said, very rarely did movies scare me too much as a kid. Like, I would get, like, scared when I first listened to creepypastas. That used to kind of keep me up, and that was fun. But movies often didn't. However, there was another thing that did scare the hell out of us, because me and my brothers used to make, like, a pillow fort out of our bunk bed, and we'd all sleep in that. And when we made the pillow fort, one time when one of the Saw movies was coming out, I don't remember specifically which one, but one of the Saw movies had an ad that would pop up on the screen between different commercials, and it was tripping us out because we thought there was like something wrong with the TV. Because, like, randomly, we were watching some shit on TV. I don't even remember what we were watching. But all of a sudden, the Billy puppet, you know, the jigsaw puppet that he uses, pops up and goes, "Hello." And then it just goes right back to regular commercials. And then a little bit later, he pops up again and says, "I want to play a game." And then again, back to regular commercials. And it did this a couple of times throughout, so it was pretty fucking scary. And obviously, there were movies that I found scary, that I watched as a kid. Other than that, just these are the ones that elicited specific experiences. One that I actually had as an adult that I found to be a particularly scary movie at the time I saw it as an adult. It's not like it had the same effect on me as it would have as a kid, but when I first saw that movie Dark Skies, which was that fucking freaky-ass alien movie, I remember the first time I saw that, I thought it was pretty freaky. This would have been when I was, 19? I don't know how it holds up now. I haven't seen it in years. But I thought it was pretty freaky for an alien movie. Again, not the same kind of fear, but I thought it was, oh, that's a good, scary movie, right? But as a kid, I was scared of Signs, at least parts of it. But not the same kind of scared, right? It's the good kind of scared, the one where you're having fun watching it. Which is a little bit different. Mostly the topic of this video is about things that were like the bad kind of scared, where you're actually scared. Although there is a fun to that too. But yeah, just thought I'd mention, there were other movies than the ones I've mentioned on here that did scare me even later in life to a point. Although right in this day and age, mainly it's just like atmosphere. I don't really get scared from movies like I used to, which is a shame because there was a certain fun to that you don't get anymore. I'll also come in here and include some games that scared me the first time I played them. There was Doom 3, which was actually my introduction to Doom. Used to find that terrifying as a kid. Fear, the first one. Love that game. It's scary as hell. I fucking love Fear 1. And we used to mess with each other a lot. Like, specifically, Danny used to fuck with us all the time and try to scare us, and always ended up scaring himself as a kid, too. So, when that ad happened, we were in our little pillow fort that we built, and we were just kind of getting freaked out, and I was, like, seeing things in the dark, and I kept thinking of that Saw ad, and getting scared by that. It was a really distinct memory of one thing. And there was another thing I remember. There was a time we played Bloody Mary. Now, I did it wrong. We didn't use a mirror. We just flickered the lights on and off and just said her name over and over again. And that obviously scared us, and we were, like, fucking freaking out, and me and my brothers were all terrified of that. Not a movie or anything, it's the whole little tradition thing, like when you're a kid, you do Bloody Mary. And it did scare us, so that was one thing, another time that scared us. But like I said, not a whole lot of movies scared me. These were the ones that I could think of, as well as some stuff that weren't movies, like that commercial thing, and the Bloody Mary thing. There's been plenty of other times that we scared each other as kids by telling scary stories and making shit up, or pretending we saw shit, stuff like that. A favorite of Danny was he used to take the remote and, like, turn the TV on and off. And you always knew it was him, but he always denied it and was, like, really fucking persistent in denying it to the point that it was really annoying. Which reminds me, there was another time where it was, like, after midnight, and I was laying in bed, and Danny came up to my room and, like, tried to open the door to see if I was awake. And he didn't realize it was that as late as it fucking was. But I was being really paranoid that night, so I had the bed pushed up against the door. And I had a little baseball bat. Like, it wasn't a full-size baseball bat. It was made of wood, but it was a small, like, mini baseball bat. And I was laying in bed, and I had it, and I was, like, had the bed pushed up against the door, and I was holding the baseball bat, because I was, like, really paranoid, because I kept hearing all sorts of creaks and shit in the house that night. Doorknob starts turning. I start freaking out and pounding on the door with the baseball bat and shouting, "Go away, go away, go away!" And then Danny's like, "Angelo, it's me." And I'm like, "Oh, shit." And my dad comes out and he's like, "What the hell's going on?" And he's like, "I just wanted to see if he was awake." And, yeah, it was a whole thing. Again, we did a lot of stupid stuff as kids. That was one of the times he wasn't actually trying to scare me, but I was on edge and being paranoid that night. There were plenty of nights where I was paranoid as a kid. But again, it was rarely linked to media. So, that's the things I can think of that scared me. I'm sure there's plenty more out there, but like I said, I watched horror movies fairly young. I saw the 1990s version of It when I was like 3, and it didn't bother me. I saw Silence of the Lambs when I was like 10 or 11. So it's not like horror has always like terrified me, but there have been random moments where it has. So I guess that this is my type of that video. Like I said, I'm not going to use the word childhood trauma because I think that's a fucking gay way to describe it, but that's my video on the subject. I hope you guys enjoyed. And today I'm going to be talking about my unpopular horror opinions. And it's in no particular order. So let's just kind of go. This is going to probably be a little bit rambly, but let's go. So the first kind of unpopular opinion I wanted to talk about today as far as some horror stuff is the movie It Follows, I think is greatly overrated. I don't think it's very good. And I've never understood why people act like it's this masterpiece in like atmospheric build-up in horror when I remember when I watched it, I just thought it was kind of fucking goofy and stupid. So the premise is, this monster chases you around and tries to kill you, presumably, and you'll die if it gets you. The way it works is, if you have sex with someone, it'll go after them instead. So basically, I feel like it's supposed to be a commentary on STDs and maybe unplanned pregnancy, things like that. But it's just kind of stupid. I've never understood why people found it so creepy. I mean, yes, they never really show the monster or anything, so a lot of people are like, oh, it's that mystery, it's the fear of the unknown. It's like, don't get me wrong, I love fear of the unknown, I love H.P. Lovecraft, and I love a lot of atmospheric horror. But I just don't feel like this is the masterpiece everyone holds it up to be. Like, everyone acts like it's like the best modern horror movie ever in the last few years. So many reviewers I've seen online have praised the shit out of this movie, and I just can't take it seriously. It's such a stupid premise. I remember I was talking to Corbin about this, and he brought up it would have been better if they'd actually made it about an actual STD and had it be like really fucked up body horror. And I kind of agree, that actually probably would have been better. So, yeah, I don't think It Follows is anywhere near as good as everyone makes it out to be. I just think it's kind of generic. Like, everyone acts like, oh, it's so unique and original, and I mean, I guess in some respects the concept's sort of original. I mean, it is the only movie I can say where if you fuck someone, you pass the monster on to them. I'll give you that. But to me, original doesn't equal good, and I just frankly didn't enjoy it. So yeah, I don't really think It Follows is anywhere near as good as everyone makes it out to be. Alright, now the second opinion. This one's in a similar vein. And it's kind of going to be weird, because this opinion is both popular and unpopular, I think, at the same time. Because I've heard people agree with me, and the people who disagree with me on this are actually kind of a newer thing. And that's that Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is fucking boring. I can't stand that movie. Like, everyone acts like the only reason people don't like it is because it doesn't have Michael Myers in it. And I just frankly didn't enjoy it at all. Like, there were elements I got a laugh out of here and there. And, you know, I'm willing to give it another shot. I do own it on DVD. I might give it another watch and see if I can have some ironic fun out of it, which is what I was going into in the first place. I wanted to have some ironic fun in it, but it was so slow and boring, and it dragged on. And the plot's fucking stupid, too, which, granted, I was hoping it would be even stupider and be more fun. But Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, it's like these robots using witchcraft to make these masks that if kids wear while they're watching a commercial will just kill them. And I think it's ballsy they were just going to straight up show the kids dying in the movie. So I do think that's pretty cool that they did that. Because a lot of horror movies shy away from the death of children. So I will give it that, and I did get a few laughs out of it here and there. But ultimately, I just found it kind of slow and boring for most of the movie. There was only one or two parts that I genuinely thought were funny, ironically. And there wasn't anything that I genuinely felt was, like, actually good about it, other than perhaps the aesthetic. I do think that the Halloween aesthetic in this movie is pretty good. It definitely feels Halloween-y. You can feel the spirit of the season. But other than that, and a couple of laughs, I didn't get a whole hell of a lot out of that movie. Alright, moving on to number 3, and this one's kind of a hard one to explain, and I don't even know if this is unpopular, but let's get into it. Horror is a very difficult genre to explain or define, because I don't think that a lot of movies people consider to be horror are horror, and there are plenty of movies that aren't considered horror that I do consider horror. So for instance, let's say for example Alien, the first one. I think that's very clearly a psychological and maybe even cosmic horror to some extent. Maybe not on a grand scale, but it definitely has elements of it, and I think it's great. It is a sci-fi horror. But then you get movies that are just really over the top and gory. Like, for instance, best example I can think of in this case is Ichi the Killer. I don't see how anyone can view Ichi the Killer as horror. It's just really over the top violent. And I guess it's horrific with the violence, but I just don't see how anyone could view Ichi the Killer, either the manga or the movie, as a horror. I've always just seen it as like an interesting crime, violent thing. So, I don't know. Horror is a hard thing for me to define. I think that it's a tough thing to define exactly what is a horror. And I think that's true with a lot of genres, to be fair. Like, what constitutes a sitcom? You know, what separates a sitcom from something similar to a sitcom that isn't? Like, for instance, is the US version of Wilfred a sitcom? I would argue it's invariably true that the Australian version is. But is the American version? I think so, but it's also kind of got elements of dramedy and a few other things in it. And some suspense and action, too. So horror, I run into a lot of the same things. Because to me, horror is something that should, like, scare you or creep you out, right? But maybe I just overthink it with that. Like, for instance, Cannibal Holocaust, I could see maybe an argument to be made for being horror because, you know, the stakes, you know, of the bad things happening to the people, but it's like, at the end of it, you're rooting for the film crew to get attacked because of how shitty they've been the entire movie to the cannibals. So it's like, I've never really considered that one a horror movie either, but it's often considered to be a horror movie. I don't know, it's just very hard for me to define horror. So that's something I run into a lot with problems. And the same thing with anime, too. Like, is Elfen Lied a horror anime? I don't know, it's violent, but would I call it horror? Maybe. I don't know. Horror is just a hard thing to define, so I don't know if that's a controversial opinion, but there it is. Alright, on to the next opinion. Seriousness in horror, right? While I do think there are plenty of excellent horror movies that are serious, that are fucking fantastic, like for instance John Carpenter's The Thing. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite all-time movies. Super creepy, atmospheric, great atmosphere and build-up. It's very creepy. That's great. I love that kind of serious horror movie. But in all honesty, in a lot of cases, I prefer a horror movie that just doesn't take itself too seriously. I don't mind horror movies being a little cheesy, over the top, and campy. That's fun. I don't know that this is necessarily a controversial or unpopular opinion, but I definitely do think it is one that maybe could be divisive. I think a lot of people might not like some of the over-the-top goofy series, you know, like Friday the 13th's later movies. I love Jason X. I think it's so stupid, but I absolutely love it. So I don't know, there could be a lot of things, like, it could just be a matter of personal taste. I do think a lot of people do like those movies, but I do think that it could be divisive. I don't know how unpopular that is. But pretty simple one. Let's move on to the next opinion. I absolutely love the Saw sequels. That's not including Spiral, because number one, I haven't seen Spiral, and number two, what I know about Spiral, I don't think I'd like it. I've heard a lot of contrivances and stupid stuff about it. But I do like the other Saw sequels, all of them, to varying degrees, obviously. And in all honesty, I think a lot of them are at least interesting enough to be on par with the original movie. But yeah, the Saw movies are fun. They're good. They're pretty suspenseful with some of the traps, but they also are an interesting crime drama character series for me. So I've always enjoyed them. Next opinion. Now this one's going to be one that I think is probably one of the more controversial ones here. The Halloween remake is better than the original John Carpenter's Halloween. And obviously I'm not talking in how well constructed it is and things like that. I just think that it's a much more enjoyable movie. I think the Halloween remake from 2007 is fucking great. I loved the backstory to Michael Myers. I know a lot of people don't, because they're like, Michael Myers didn't need a backstory. This is just weird and contrived, and it's just Rob Zombie putting his style into it. But I really liked it. Like, a lot of people think it takes away some of the mystique of Michael Myers, and I just don't see how, because, I mean, he goes silent for decades, and I think that still builds up the mystique around him. You don't really know what's going on in his head. I don't think it's perfect. I think some of the dialogue is kind of stupid, especially from the teenage girls in the, you know, like Laurie and her friends. I think that's kind of dumb, but I do think that overall I enjoy it the most out of any of the Halloween movies. The Halloween remake is my favorite one. Although I do also really like Halloween 2018, and I do like the original as well, but in all honesty, I'm not the biggest fan of the original compared to some of the sequels, and I know that's probably controversial too. To be fair, Halloween has never been my favorite slasher franchise. I've always been much more into Nightmare on Elm Street, and also into Friday the 13th. But I do still like the Halloween movies. I would say out of the original ones, 4 was my favorite, but I do think that the remake is much more enjoyable for me personally than the original. Alright, next opinion. Again, I don't know how controversial this is, but I mean, I don't hear a lot of people talk about it, so here it is. And that is that I think supernatural zombies, you know, like voodoo and like magic zombies and just zombies that are brought back through some sort of unknown supernatural mean, are much more interesting than virus zombies. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The virus zombies, just to me, they're so overdone. You don't see the supernatural zombies as much anymore, where they're just resurrected by some supernatural mean. But the thing I like about supernatural zombies is there is iconic zombie imagery that you just don't see anymore, because every zombie movie has to be a virus zombie now. And that is the hand rising up from the grave. I think that is so cool, the iconic imagery of the graveyard with the corpses rising from the ground. It's just not really a thing anymore, because everything's like, oh, it's a virus, the bodies get back up. And on that note, zombie movies are not my favorite. I'm definitely not as against them as I was for a while. Back when The Walking Dead was in full swing with its popularity, I kind of got burned out on zombies, because there were so many zombie movies and they're all just kind of the same. I do have some that are my favorites, and a lot of them are unconventional. As far as the type of zombie, although I do think they are popular movies. Like, my favorite zombie movie is 28 Days Later. I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. I think that's a pretty well-regarded movie. But yeah, I do think that overall supernatural zombies are better, although 28 Days Later is a virus zombie thing, but it takes it in a different direction, so it makes it interesting enough. But I do love that iconic imagery of old-school zombie movies with the hand coming out of the grave. You don't really see that in a whole lot of movies. Alright, next opinion. Friday the 13th on NES is actually a really good game that was ahead of its time. I love Friday the 13th on NES. There are problems with it, for sure. It can be very grindy and frustrating at times, but it's got a pretty open world map, and I think it's a better representation of the movies than a lot of people thought it was. Because the whole point is you just gotta kill Jason and survive, and don't let the kids die off, and don't let all your people die off. I think that's pretty representative of what the feel of Friday the 13th. And like, again, the only goal is to kill Jason. You can do it any way you want. It's just very difficult, and it gets easier if you do certain things, like getting the sweater to give you more health, and getting the torch to do more damage. Things like that. I do think that the game gets a lot more hate than it deserves. I absolutely loved it. It's one of my top 10 favorite NES games. It's certainly difficult and frustrating at times, but I absolutely love it. Now on to the next opinion, and this one's a little bit weird because I kind of go back and forth on it. But I do think that House of a Thousand Corpses is a very underrated movie. Maybe that's not the most unpopular opinion, but I would say that this next bit is probably a little bit unpopular. In some cases, I actually think I prefer it over Devil's Rejects. Now, granted, it depends on which watching, because my first time I preferred House of a Thousand Corpses, second time I preferred Devil's Rejects, third time I preferred House of a Thousand Corpses. Like, it goes back and forth. I can't decide which one I like better, because they're both very different movies, and I enjoy them for different reasons. But I do love House of a Thousand Corpses, and in some ways I do like the imagery in it better than Devil's Rejects. Alright, now on to the last opinion, and this is one that I've gone into a few times on the channel. I really fucking hate Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I can't stand Nightmare on Elm Street 2. It's the only one of the original 7 that I don't like, so I think that that does say something. Like, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is boring and has nothing to do with the rest of the movies. Freddy's in it for like 3 minutes, and then he just possesses the character to just be like, kill for me. But then he doesn't even go on like much of a killing spree. There's very little kills, and don't get me wrong, the kills aren't a deal breaker for me, because New Nightmare doesn't have very many kills either, but I love that one. But I just think that Nightmare on Elm Street 2 Freddy's Revenge is just fucking lame. The acting in it is terrible. There's that one dialogue where that bird explodes and the dad's like, I know what you did, you used a goddamn cherry bomb. And I just remember not liking it compared to the others, because it takes place 5 years after the original, and it takes place in the same house, which is the only real tie back to the original characters. At least in 3, they brought Nancy back and actually started to have the recurring theme where at least one character would carry over to the next movie, and I think that was the problem I had with 2. Because Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite slasher franchise. I absolutely love it. Freddy's one of my favorite characters in horror. I love him. Fun movies. I hate the remake, but that's not unpopular. Everybody hates the remake. But yeah, I can't stand Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I've watched it multiple times, and I have never enjoyed it anymore each time I've watched it. Most of the time when I'm rewatching the series, I will watch it again, but it's like a chore to get through. So sometimes I'll just skip it. But yeah, that's my unpopular horror opinions. Like I said, kind of rambly, unstructured, whatever. I hope you've enjoyed. This has been Fugitive Redeye. Have a good one. Toodles.
Curry sauce all over your anus. Delish.
Looking for cheap thrills, asshole?